Welcome to Kindness Stories. Every day we bring you powerful stories that prove kindness, strength, and courage can change lives. If you love inspiring stories that reveal the strength of the human spirit, make sure to subscribe and join our journey. She was the quiet one, the new girl, always looking down at her notebook, never raising her hand unless she had to. The kind of girl who walked the halls with her books clutched tight, her steps quick and deliberate, trying to blend into the background of a school that never felt like home. Nobody really knew her name at first, just as she transferred from another city. She didn't talk much, didn't eat lunch in the cafeteria, and never made eye contact. But that didn't stop the mean girls. It started with whispers, the type of cruel comments that sounded like giggles if you weren't paying attention. When she passed by, they'd mimic her walk. One even dropped her books on purpose in front of her to make her stop and pick them up, just to laugh at how flustered she became. It wasn't enough that she was quiet, that she kept to herself. In their eyes, she didn't belong. And then one day, they went too far. It was in Mrs. Carmichael's third period history class. The classroom was packed, students bored, doodling, whispering while the teacher droned on about ancient civilizations. The new girl sat quietly in the second row, taking notes. Her long hair hid her face. She wore a long, pleated skirt and a plain white blouse, nothing flashy, nothing that drew attention. But to the three girls in the back row, she was a target. One of them passed a note, another snickered, and before anyone knew what was happening, one of them reached into her bag, pulled out a pair of scissors, and crept forward while the teacher turned to write on the board. Snip. It was fast, a sharp sound that made a few heads turn, but most kids just kept staring at their desks. When the new girl looked down, her heart stopped. The back of her skirt had been sliced halfway up. There was silence. Then laughter, the kind of laughter that felt like knives. She stood up, face red, clutching the torn fabric, tears welling in her eyes. The teacher turned around to late. The girls had already slipped the scissors back into their bag and pretended like nothing had happened. But that moment had changed everything. She didn't cry in class. She didn't scream. She walked straight to the front, handed the teacher a note, and left the room without a word. What no one knew, what no one could have guessed, is that the shy girl wasn't always this quiet. She hadn't always hidden behind books and long skirts. Back in her old town, before everything fell apart, she was a rising star in Judo, district champion, multiple medals. Her father was her coach. Her mother had been her biggest fan. Until the accident. It happened last year. A drunk driver. One mistake took everything. She moved to her aunt's house in a new city and swore she'd never compete again, never fight again. She wore long skirts to hide the scars on her legs. She avoided crowds, as she thought if she kept her head down, no one would notice her pain. But that day, something broke inside her. The next morning, she walked into the school wearing a judo hoodie. Her hair was tied back, her eyes calm. She didn't sit in the back. She didn't flinch when the whispers started again. She had gone home and made a decision. No more hiding. When the bell rang, she stood near her locker, waiting. The three bullies passed by, nudging each other, smirking. They expected her to run, to cry, to do what she always did. Instead, she spoke. "You think I'm afraid of you?" That stopped them cold. One of them sneered. "You gonna cry again?" She took a step forward. "You're not scary. You're just sad." The hallway had gone quiet. Phones came out. Kids gathered. One of the girls lunged forward to push her. Big mistake. In a single fluid motion, the new girl sidestepped, grabbed the girl's wrist, and flipped her over her shoulder. The loud thud echoed down the hallway. The crowd gasped. Another came at her, swinging. She ducked, swept the leg, and the second girl went down hard. The third tried to grab her from behind, but with a simple pivot and a hip toss, she was on the floor, groaning. Three girls, three moves, three takedowns. The security guard arrived seconds later, out of breath, but the fight was already over. Phones had captured everything. The principal reviewed the footage. Suspension letters were issued. The girls who laughed now sat at home, facing the consequences. And the new girl, she was called into the principal's office but not to be punished, to be applauded. Her story spread fast. Teachers whispered about it in the lounge. Students who never noticed her before now greeted her in the halls. She wasn't invisible anymore. She had shown that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's silent, patient, until it's time to rise. But the most surprising thing wasn't the fight. It was what she did afterward. Instead of basking in the attention, she joined the school's self-defense club, started volunteering to teach younger girls how to protect themselves. She didn't want revenge. She wanted change. Her story inspired others to speak up. A few students admitted they had been bullied too. The school counselor started a program for victims. Things began to shift. One act of courage had started a chain reaction, and slowly, the shy girl transformed. She began smiling more, talking, laughing. She wore her judo uniform proudly on match days. She rejoined tournaments, and every time she stepped onto the mat, she remembered that day. Not the humiliation, but the strength that came after. She didn't need to hide anymore. Her scars were a part of her story, not something to be ashamed of. As for the bullies, they returned to school weeks later, humble, changed. They avoided her at first, but one day, one of them approached her in the cafeteria. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know what you were going through." The new girl looked at her, then nodded. "You didn't have to. You just needed to be kind." And in that moment, something incredible happened. Forgiveness, not for their sake, but for her own peace. Because real strength is not just about knowing how to fight. It's knowing when not to. If you found this story powerful, inspiring, or heart-touching, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their inner strength. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Stories for more real stories that move hearts and uplift spirits. Every view, every share helps kindness grow.